The scent of industrial lemon and cold glass was the smell of failure. Nia inhaled it every night, the chemical tang a constant reminder of how far she had fallen. 2 years ago, she smelled ozone and the clean, electric hum of possibility in rooms just like this one. Now, she pushed a cart of cleaning supplies through the silent corridors of the Kageyama Tower, the city of Tokyo a glittering, indifferent tapestry outside the floor-to-ceiling windows. Her reflection moved with her, a ghost in dark blue overalls and bright yellow gloves, a phantom haunting the world that had cast her out. The 38th floor was the server hub, the building's digital heart. The air here was different, cooler, drier, vibrating with the low thrum of 1,000 fans. This was her last stop of the night, and her favorite. The rows of black server racks were like monoliths in a forgotten temple. She ran a microfiber cloth over a smooth, cool surface, her movements automatic. But her eyes weren't on the dust. They were on the scrolling lines of diagnostic text on a nearby monitor, a language she still spoke fluently even if no one would listen. She saw it out of the corner of her eye. A flicker of red on a monitor that should have been a steady, reassuring green. Just one. Then another. A cascade of crimson error logs began to flood the screen, a digital hemorrhage. Her hand froze mid-swipe. She knew that code. She knew it like she knew the scars on her own hands. It was hers. The system was called Cerberus, a three-headed security protocol she had designed during her internship at a top-tier American tech firm. It was her masterpiece, the project that was supposed to launch her career. Instead, it had been the weapon used to destroy it. Her supervisor, a woman named Carol who smiled with too many teeth, had presented Nia's work as her own. When a rival corporation had sabotaged the initial launch, Carol had swiftly pointed the finger at the inexperienced intern, altering logs to make it look like Nia's negligence had created the vulnerability. Nia was fired, blacklisted, and escorted from the building like a criminal. Now, 2 years later, her ghost was running on the servers of the new owner, a man whispered about in the city's underbelly. Kenji Tanaka. He'd bought the building and the tech firm that operated within it 6 months ago. His name was associated with old money and new violence. The red alerts were multiplying, faster now. A thermal warning flashed. The core temperature was climbing at an impossible rate. This wasn't a glitch, it was a meltdown. She leaned closer, her breath fogging the screen. The subroutines were fighting each other, trapped in a feedback loop. And the safety protocols, her meticulously crafted fail-safes, they were gone. Stripped out. It was like watching a surgeon perform open-heart surgery with a chainsaw. Panic, cold and sharp, tried to rise in her throat, but she swallowed it down. A competence was a muscle she hadn't let atrophy. She ripped off her thick yellow gloves, her bare fingers feeling the strange, forbidden electricity of the keyboard. This was not her job. This was not her problem. Her job was to wipe away the grime of other people's lives, to remain invisible. But watching her own creation tear itself apart was a pain that went deeper than professional pride. It was personal. She dropped to her knees, her fingers finding the almost invisible seam of a maintenance panel at the base of the main console. She didn't need a key. She knew the pressure points. The panel clicked open, revealing a port that 99% of the building's technicians didn't even know existed. Her personal backdoor. She pulled a small drive from her pocket, one she always carried, a relic of a life she couldn't quite let go of, and plugged it in. A command line interface appeared, stark white text on a black screen. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, typing lines of code from memory. She wasn't just fixing a problem. She was speaking to an old friend. She bypassed the corrupted admin layers and initiated an emergency shutdown of the non-essential processes, rerouting all cooling power to the core. It was a brute force solution, a digital tourniquet. It wouldn't hold for long, but it would stop the bleeding. The frantic wail of the alarms cut off abruptly. The angry red lights on the racks blinked out, replaced by a pulsing, cautionary amber. The immediate danger had passed. Silence rushed back into the room, thick and heavy. That was when she heard it. The soft, elegant chime of the private elevator reserved for the penthouse. She scrambled to her feet, her heart hammering against her ribs. She pulled her drive, snapped the panel shut, and tried to look like she belonged there, a cleaner who had simply stopped to watch the pretty lights. The elevator doors slid open with a whisper. Two men stepped out first, broad-shouldered and silent, their black suits perfectly tailored to conceal whatever they carried beneath them. They moved with the predatory grace of wolves, their eyes scanning the room and dismissing her instantly. They were just the frame. The portrait came next. Kenji Tanaka stepped out of the elevator. He was not a large man, but he occupied the space as if he had carved it from the air for himself. His suit was a dark charcoal, the fabric so fine it seemed to drink the light. He wore no tie, the top button of his stark white shirt undone, revealing the edge of an intricate tattoo curling around his collarbone, the ink a deep, menacing blue, like the heart of a flame. His face was all sharp angles and disciplined stillness, his eyes dark and profoundly empty. He didn't look at the servers. He didn't look at the amber warning lights. He looked directly at her. He saw the discarded yellow gloves on the floor. He saw the faint flush on her cheeks, the way her hands were curled into fists at her sides instead of holding a mop. He saw a cleaner who was standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, with the wrong expression on her face. His gaze was not accusatory. It was worse. It was analytical, like a biologist studying an insect it had just pinned to a board. He said nothing to her. He turned his head slightly, a barely perceptible motion, and spoke to one of the men beside him. His voice was low, smooth, and utterly devoid of emotion. "Bring her." Nia's blood went cold. She wasn't being fired. She was being acquired. The men moved toward her, their steps soundless on the polished concrete. There was nowhere to run. The world outside the window had never felt so far away. The penthouse was less an apartment and more a kingdom in the sky. The walls were glass, offering a 360-degree view of Tokyo glittering below. The furniture was minimalist and brutalist, slabs of dark wood, black leather, and polished chrome. It was a space designed for control, not comfort. A group of men in shirt sleeves, his tech team, were gathered around a massive screen, their faces pale with stress, their voices a low, panicked murmur. Nia was placed in a chair in the corner of the room, one of Kenji's silent guards standing behind her. She was an anomaly, a piece that didn't fit. The cleaners were not supposed to exist on this floor. They were supposed to be nocturnal creatures, gone before the sun rose. Kenji stood before the large screen, his back to her. He listened as his head of technology, a nervous man with sweat beading on his forehead, tried to explain the situation. "The system is stable, but it's a temporary state. We can't access the core functions. Some kind of ghost protocol has been initiated. It's locked us out. We estimate a total system crash in less than an hour. And our external security?" Kenji's voice was dangerously calm. "It's compromised. The firewall is holding, but if the core goes down, we'll be blind. Anyone watching will know we're vulnerable." Kenji was silent for a long moment. He turned his head, his dark eyes finding Nia in her corner. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. "The system that is failing," he said, his voice carrying across the vast space, "is the same one that protects my sister. She resides on the floor below. When I took over this territory, a promise was made that she would be untouchable here. A failure in this system is not a financial liability. It is a broken promise." He paused, and the weight of his next words settled like a shroud. "I have broken such a promise once before. A single weak link, a moment of misplaced trust, cost me someone I was sworn to protect. It will not happen again." His gaze held Nia's. He was not just speaking to his men. He was speaking to her. He was revealing a wound, a sliver of the man beneath the perfectly tailored armor. It was a warning and, strangely, a plea. This was not about data. This was about a life. His shame was a living thing in the room, a cold presence that made the air feel thin. The tech team continued to argue, their voices rising in pitch. They were throwing jargon at the wall, hoping something would stick. They were looking for an enemy from the outside, a hacker, a rival. They were looking in the wrong direction. Nia knew she could stay silent. She could let the system crash. Let this cold, dangerous man face the consequences of whatever violent world he inhabited. It was the safe choice, the smart choice. But she looked at the lines of failing code on the screen, a perversion of her own logic, and a cold anger burned through her fear. That was her work. Carol had stolen it, broken it, and used it to ruin her. Now, it was being used to threaten someone else. She stood up. The guard behind her tensed, his hand moving subtly inside his jacket. But Nia only had eyes for the screen. "You're wasting time," she said. Her voice was steady, clearer than she expected. The room fell silent. Every head turned toward her. The tech experts stared, their expressions a mixture of confusion and contempt. Kenji Tanaka simply watched, his face unreadable. "The breach isn't external," she continued, walking toward the screen. The guard took a step to intercept her, but Kenji lifted a single finger and the man froze. "It's internal. The core logic has been corrupted." The original safety protocols were stripped out and replaced with a parasitic loop designed to cause a catastrophic thermal failure. "Your ghost protocol," she said, looking at the head technician, "is the emergency override I built into the original architecture. It's the only thing keeping your servers from melting." Silence. The head of tech stared at her, his mouth slightly agape. You're a cleaner." "I wrote the original code for Cerberus," Nia said, her voice flat. 2 years ago, before my work was stolen, and I was fired for the sabotage that was done to it." Kenji's eyes narrowed. He took a step closer to her, his presence a palpable force. He studied her face, searching for a lie, for a hint of deception. He found none. He saw only a weary certainty, the quiet confidence of someone who knows the absolute truth. He gave a quiet, simple order that changed everything. "Let her work." The tech team parted like the Red Sea. They led her to the main console, a sleek black desk that felt more like an altar. As she sat down, she was aware of Kenji moving to stand directly behind her chair. He was so close she could feel the heat radiating from his body. She could smell his cologne, a subtle, clean scent of sandalwood, and something else, something like cold smoke, like embers after a fire. It was unsettlingly intimate. His hand rested on the back of her chair, his fingers just inches from her shoulder. It was not a comforting gesture. It was an anchor, a claim, a silent reminder that her life now depended entirely on the skill in her hands. "Fix it," he commanded, his voice a low vibration by her ear. Her fingers found the keyboard. The world narrowed to the screen in front of her, the lines of code, and the silent, lethal man standing behind her, his shadow blanketing her in a darkness she had no choice but to enter. Her mind was a sanctuary of pure logic. The panic of his men, the suffocating weight of his presence, the glittering abyss of the city outside, it all faded away. There was only the code. She moved through the corrupted directories with a speed and intimacy that left the other technicians breathless. It was like watching a master locksmith pick a lock no one else could even see. She wasn't hacking the system. She was communing with it. She found the parasitic loop, a nasty, elegant piece of malware woven into the system's core. It was designed to mimic her own coding style, a cruel, personal touch. But it was a flawed imitation. It lacked her foresight, her obsession with balance and redundancy. As she worked to isolate and dismantle it, she found something else. A digital signature, deliberately hidden, but not hidden well enough from its own creator. CJH. Carol.
Jean. Hendricks.
The name hit her with the force of a physical blow. The woman who had ruined her life. She hadn't just disappeared. She had taken Nia's work and sold it to the highest, most dangerous bidder. The sabotage wasn't random. It was a targeted attack, and Carol was the weapon. Just as Nia finished quarantining the last of the malware, a new alert flashed on the screen. It wasn't a system error. It was a physical security breach. Elevator override. Floors 35 to 39. Stairwell access unlocked. West Wing. "They're in the building," Kenji said, his voice a blade of ice. He had seen the alert the same moment she had. The penthouse, once a silent throne room, exploded into controlled chaos. His men moved with quiet, deadly efficiency, pulling weapons from hidden compartments, their faces hardening into emotionless masks. The lights in the room dimmed, and steel shutters slammed down over the glass walls, encasing them in a metal cocoon. The distant pop-pop-pop of silenced gunfire echoed from the floors below. The attack was too fast, too precise. They had used the system's brief vulnerability as a key to open the door. The cyber attack was just a distraction. Kenji grabbed her arm, his grip like iron. "Stay with me." He pulled her away from the console, his body becoming a shield between her and the entrance. A bullet shattered the reinforced glass of the door, spraying splinters across the marble floor. He pushed her down behind a large, solid oak desk, crouching beside her. The scent of sandalwood and smoke was now mixed with the acrid smell of cordite. Through a gap in the desk, Nia saw it all. Kenji moved with a terrifying grace, a dance of lethal precision. He was not a businessman who played at being a gangster. He was a predator in his natural habitat. His gun seemed an extension of his hand, his every movement economical and final. In the midst of the chaos, her mind was still racing. Carol. She knew the system. She knew its weaknesses because she had studied Nia's designs. She would know the emergency exits, the service routes. She was likely already on her way out. Nia spotted a tablet on a low table near the desk, its screen glowing with the building's security schematics. While Kenji and his men exchanged fire with the intruders near the elevator bank, she crawled, low and fast, toward it. Her heart was a frantic drum against her ribs. This was insane. She was a cleaner, a coder, not this. But the anger was a cold, hard stone in her gut. Carol had tried to destroy her, and now she was using Nia's work to enable this violence, to threaten the lives of everyone in this room. The line between victim and survivor was blurring. Her fingers flew across the tablet screen. She accessed the lockdown protocols, not the general ones the intruders had bypassed, but the deep system maintenance controls only she knew. She found the West Wing service corridor. A live camera feed showed a woman with familiar blonde hair, Carol, rushing toward an emergency exit, a pistol clutched in her hand. Nia didn't hesitate. She rerouted the command. With a single tap, she triggered a fire suppression sequence in that specific corridor. Heavy steel doors slammed shut at both ends, trapping Carol in a cage of her own making. An alarm blared, but only on the security network. Carol was caught. Nia had crossed a line. She hadn't just defended, she had hunted. She had used her knowledge as a weapon, not just to fix a machine, but to capture a person. A tremor went through her hands. She looked up and met Kenji's eyes across the room. He had seen her. In the middle of a firefight, he had been watching her. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Acknowledgement. Approval. The firefight was over as quickly as it began. Kenji's men were ruthlessly efficient. They secured the floor, their movements calm and practiced. The immediate threat was neutralized. Later, in the silence of his private office, the steel shutters were retracted, revealing a sky beginning to bruise with the first hints of dawn. The adrenaline was leaving her, replaced by a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. Kenji stood by the window, a dark silhouette against the nascent light. There was a tear in the sleeve of his expensive suit, a dark stain of blood seeping through the fabric from a graze on his forearm. He turned, picked up a first aid kit from a cabinet, and began to clean the wound himself, his movements stiff. Nia found herself walking toward him. "Here," she said quietly, taking the antiseptic wipe from his hand. "Let me." He didn't protest. He simply watched her, his gaze intense as she carefully cleaned the wound. Her hands, surprisingly, were steady. The skin of his arm was warm beneath her fingers. She worked in silence, focusing on the task, on the small, physical reality of it in a night that had felt like a fever dream. When she was done, she applied a bandage, her touch gentle. The silence stretched, filled with everything that had happened. "My men are loyal because they are paid, or because they are afraid," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "They follow my orders. You had a choice. You could have hidden. Why did you trap that woman?" Nia finished pressing the bandage into place and finally met his eyes. The exhaustion was there, but so was something else. A hard, newly forged certainty. "She took my life from me once," Nia said, her voice low but clear. "I wasn't going to let her do it again." It wasn't an apology or an explanation. It was a confession, a statement of shared understanding. In his world, you didn't let people take things from you and live.
She understood that now.
A look passed between them that was more intimate than any touch. He saw the steel beneath her quiet exterior. She saw the flicker of something in his eyes, not warmth, but recognition. As if he were seeing her, truly seeing her, for the first time. One of his men entered, bowing slightly. "We have the woman. She is talking." The attack tonight was a test. A distraction. He hesitated. The intel she sold to the Ito clan wasn't just about the system's vulnerabilities. It was about the person who built it. They know who she is. They know she is here. They don't want a system anymore, Tanaka-sama. They want the architect. Kenji's gaze snapped back to Nia. The flicker of recognition was gone, replaced by a cold, possessive fury. The enemy no longer wanted to breach his walls. They wanted to steal the key. They wanted her. The final battle was not fought with guns, but with light and logic. The Ito clan, armed with Carol's knowledge and a team of their own hackers, launched a full-scale assault on the Kageyama Tower's network. It was a digital siege. Kenji's men could hold the physical perimeter, but the war for the building's soul was happening inside the servers, and Nia was its only soldier. She sat at the console in the penthouse, the world once again reduced to the glowing screen. Kenji stood behind her, a silent sentinel. He did not offer advice or ask for updates. He simply stood guard over her, his presence an unyielding wall against the outside world. They were good. They used fragments of her own original code against her, trying to turn her creation into a weapon that would unmake itself. But they were fighting a ghost. They knew the code as it had been written. Nia knew it as it was meant to be. She knew its secrets, its hidden pathways, its capacity for rage. She didn't just build defenses. She went on the attack. She let them think they were gaining access to the core, leading them down a rabbit hole of corrupted data streams. While their best minds were chasing shadows, she was building a trap, a logic bomb, woven from the very essence of her original design. A self-destruct sequence that would only trigger if an unauthorized user tried to access the system's true heart. To arm it, she had to do something that felt like a sacrifice. She had to sever her own backdoor, the maintenance port she had used to save the system. She had to burn her only bridge back to the person she used to be. With a final, complex command, she sealed the system completely, leaving no way in or out that she did not control from the inside. She was no longer a visitor. She was the ghost in the machine. She watched the Ito clan's attack vector on her screen. She saw them bypass her final decoy firewall. They thought they had won. A triumphant string of code flashed across her monitor, their attempt to seize administrative control. Nia typed one last word. Execute. On her screen, a single line of text appeared. Goodbye across the city. In a server room belonging to the Ito clan, every screen went black. Not just offline.
Wiped.
Every byte of data they had, every piece of intel, every financial record, erased in a cascade of irreversible corruption. She hadn't just defeated them. She had annihilated their digital existence. The room was utterly still. The hum of the servers settled into a steady, healthy rhythm. It was over. Exhaustion washed over her in a wave so powerful she swayed in her chair. Kenji's hands were on her shoulders, steadying her. His touch was firm, grounding. She leaned back slightly, the first time she had allowed herself any sign of weakness in his presence. He walked around the console to face her. He looked at the screen at the clean, stable diagnostic reports. Then he looked at her. His hand came up, not to touch her shoulder, but to gently cup her face. His thumb brushed against her cheek, a touch so unexpectedly tender it made her breath catch. "They thought you were my weakness," he said, his voice a low, resonant murmur that seemed to fill the entire room. A vulnerability they could exploit. His dark eyes held hers, and for the first time, She saw them not as empty, but as deep, holding a universe of violence, honor, and a single, stark truth. They were wrong. You are the weapon. It was not a declaration of love. It was something far more potent. It was a statement of fact, an acknowledgement of what she had become in his world. She was not the prize. She was the power. He stepped back, giving her space. He gestured to a sleek black folder on the desk. This is a contract. It offers you a new name, a new life. Anything you require to continue your work. Here, at my side. The offer hung in the air. A life of power, of safety, of purpose. But it was a life in a gilded cage, no matter how beautiful. She looked at her reflection in the dark monitor. She didn't see the tired cleaner in borrowed overalls anymore. She saw the faint glow of the code on her face. She saw the woman who had faced down monsters, both digital and human, and had won.
She saw the architect.
Slowly, deliberately, she reached up and peeled off her yellow cleaning gloves, the last symbol of her old life. She folded them neatly and placed them on the console, next to the keyboard she had commanded. A final offering, a shedding of a skin. She did not say yes to his offer. She did not need to. She simply looked up at him, her gaze clear and steady. The choice was made. The silence in the penthouse was no longer empty. It was the sound of a world remade.